Hi, I'm Anna Logan. Thank you again for joining me in another conversation on the way to being seen. This is LADA. I hadn't known her before this conversation, other than meeting her at a networking event once and knowing she'd also gone through the MBA. What I really enjoyed in this conversation is that she is a designer, and hearing her whole journey and reflection of how she thought she was going to go one way, but then had learned what something inside of her was saying that she wanted instead. And she had to let go of certain dreams in order to fulfill the larger value that was speaking to her. And eventually it all came together, but she had to take these leaps of faith and just be open, knowing like if it's the right thing, it's going to come back to her. So that's what you're going to pick up in this conversation, along with a ton more. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining.
What is the current position that you're in right now?
I'm a business development manager for Samuel's Furniture Solution.
What does that mean? Business development manager. Let's explore that a little.
Yeah, so actually, I'm glad that you asked that. As I started this journey about 2.5 years ago, I came into this role trying to navigate business development. And what I gained from it and took away is that it's all about relationship. You connect with people, help people be successful in whatever way that means for them, and just be a resource to people. And as you develop these relationships, develop your own journey in this. There was a discussion of whether we should change that title or not, because we're very design focused. We do a lot of consultations, right? Interior consultation. And we went back and forth. And as I really looked into the definition of business development manager, what I started to understand is you have to know how to manage businesses and relationships and build that, and that it really becomes art, and that it goes beyond design. Because as I started connecting with the community, engaging with people, I started getting into different categories of a community, like economic development and city, county government, and volunteer work. And so it just spread into so many different avenues that it was so fitting that it stayed as business manager versus design, because it is way beyond that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I'm like, wait a minute. So you're like business manager in a design firm, essentially, right? So you're bridging that, those two layers.
I would have never expected being where I'm at, like coming into this role and being the bridge to so many avenues because of what I'm exposed to and the different industries I'm exposed to. I cover government, higher education, corporate facilities, and yeah, those are the three that I cover. And we do have a healthcare sector that I don't go into. My current employer does, but you'll meet so many people from so many different backgrounds, from all different levels of position. You start to understand how organizations tick.
Yeah.
And then that trickles into the community, and you start to understand why businesses choose to stay where they stay or why they choose to leave. And then you into like workforce development, like how do you attract and retain people? And so all of a sudden I'm going beyond the barriers of interior design and looking into, how do you build a city? How do you build an attractive city? Like what makes or breaks a city? Yeah, what makes a thriving city? Why are some communities staying stagnant, and why are some growing? And then you throw in technology and you get a back past tour of all these organizations, and you start to have comparisons of organizations and communities, and you start to see like, oh, this community does this, and I see that being really successful. I see this community trying to do that, but for whatever reason, it's just right. Like there's just this piece. And so you start to get to engage with leaders of those communities and be in conversation and hear amazing stories and strategies, wanting to grow their communities. Everyone's passionate about their community. And then everyone's passionate about the organizations too. It's just so intriguing to me that that's where my role bleeds into. and that it's just a fitting that this first design.
Let's take a little walk back. You went to college for interior design,
Correct.
and that was in Milwaukee. What first attracted you to that?
I remember probably teenage 16, about the age of 16, walking through like malls and public places and just being like, gets to design this. Like, this is pretty cool, right? Into spaces, you're like, somebody was in charge of making these decisions. And then you see some designs that are really bad and you're like, who made that bad decision? Like, I may have been able to give a better decision. And so between that and lots of interest in fashion, that took me to Mulberry College, where both programs were. And I took the 101 courses, and I was very intrigued by architecture, buildings. So that's what led me to choose interior design.
And so you were interested in both fashion and interior design, and interior design won out over fashion.
Yeah. Yes. I just think it was interest in art. Yeah. In general, just
Applied art.
yeah. So yeah, that's what kind of led me down that path, and I'm very hands-on. And so that's why I could be, when you think about like science and art, right? Like people always say pick a category, but I think that that's not, art has a lot of science and science has art. And so I like structure, but I like to be creative. I like to think out of the box, but I like a foundation to start off.
Yeah.
A platform to start off. And so that's what really helped me to get to where I'm at. Just like constantly straddling those two skills, blending it together is a strength.
You got your degree and you looked at Milwaukee for jobs, but weren't super interested.
I was originally at an architect firm down there that focused on K through 12 education, and I was really homesick. So I did a lot of commuting. School was Monday through Thursdays. I'd come home Thursday, stay till Monday, and then went down to school. And I would have stayed there, but I learned through college. Of course, I think that's when you really start to understand what it means to be an adult. And I really wanted to go to New York or some big city after graduation, but I learned the value of a small community. I learned that no job could pay me enough to come home to an empty home. I wasn't going to spend my life that way. Like, who are you going to share it with? And I come from a big family. I'm close to my extended family. That's just how the community is. And I embrace that. Some people choose not to, continue that path. But for me, I really enjoyed that. And that was a missing piece out of my life. So I really just wanted to come back home, be close to family, be a part of my own community. And then I made that decision to possibly come back and not have an opportunity.
I really like how you said that no job could pay me enough money to come home to an empty home. That's powerful. Tell me about the position that ended up landing in, which is a little different, because I've mentioned before we started that you were in commercial design is what a lot of your studies were in. But then you transitioned into a total different type of design. So let me hear some of those thoughts.
All right. So going to a 4-year college in design, my mind was set on residential design, HGTV. You see it everywhere. And so I went to school thinking that that's what I was going to go into when I graduated. But there's so much commercial focus in the 4-year degree training, education, that I graduated with my heart set. And when I came back to Wausau, a small community, fashion, trend, architecture, design, I mean, it's not in abundance, put it that way. And so coming back here, I was very nervous that I was sacrificing my career, that I may not ever have the opportunity. And I ended up landing a job at Ethan Allen, which was one of the last locations that I had decided to submit my resume to, because I was set on commercial and Ethan Allen is focused on residential. But it's interesting how
Your last choice.
I feel like life continues to spin in 180 whenever I think I have my heart set on something. It just into a new direction, right? And so you just learn to pivot. And I'm so grateful that that was the path that I had crossed paths with, because then I spent 7.5 years there and learned everything that I did about interior design today. Like my strength today in the commercial world is from everything that I learned in the residential days. That has really been the foundation of my success.
Yeah, so you had to bring like this different perspective into commercial world and
Yeah.
just bridging that gap there. Sometimes I think commercial can be a little cold or not thinking of how is someone going to feel. You know, a lot of times as artists, right, we're looking for
Yeah.
like that looks really good, and sometimes it's not the most comfortable thing. So 7.5 years at Ethan Allen, and then tell me about the transition to the next way, because that must have been hard leaving.
Yeah. You know, you say it must have been hard. I feel like it was, as I'm saying this out loud to you, a repeat of my graduation, of coming back and just kind of putting my faith out there and just saying, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice. Like my heart wants to be home. This is the decision I'm going to make. And however it happened the right way. And when I left my residential days, it was also a retail store. So we spent a lot of weekends working.
Yeah.
And I had lost my very close aunt on my paternal side, and then my very close uncle from my maternal side, probably 3 months apart. And I just couldn't. And then at that time, I had decided that I may be considering having children, and I couldn't continue the career that I was in, with the weekends. As much as I loved it, I just couldn't. So again, I was back at that position of asking myself, okay, are you going to sacrifice your career? I went back and forth so many times with my husband, like, if I say no, I may never get another design position here in Wausau unless we. And I knew I wanted to be here because our family's here. And I just took that leap of faith. And I ended up working a year doing data specialist work. And this opportunity came along, and I applied for it. And 8.5 years later, here I am.
So you took like, look, this is incredible. So you're like, okay, you've got this career and I love this, but I want this part with family. That can be very countercultural, especially the design world, I would say, because there's a lot of position focused on where you're going to go. At least that's the trend that I've noticed. It's like who you work for, that's success.
Yeah.
But you were like, no, my success resides in my family, my future outside of the job.
Yes.
And so you chose to let go. And and then this came along, and then that's really
Not easy.
courageous.
Thank you. Scary at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say, because you're letting go of something that you love in your world for the sake of the larger group and your vision for your life, which then you did the data job. And that was just kind of a nice little placeholder. How did you find this one?
So I actually worked full-time at Ethan Allen my last year. It technically was a year and a half. And I was there full-time, and then a friend had said, oh, there's this part-time job, and if you want, 4 hours every day, 5 days a week. For whatever reason. Oh, and I also had gone into the residential design industry during the recession too. Yeah, worst time to go into retail. People really had to make hard decisions. And as much as I love furniture, at the end of the day, people are trying to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. So it was a different time at that time that I had spent the 7 years there. And so I decided, well, the recession was coming to an end. The weekends are getting challenging. I don't know what I want to go into. I don't know what's out there. I didn't know of any interior design positions locally. This friend had shared this part-time job with me. And so I started working there for a year before I decided to leave Ethan Allen permanently. And I had gone to work there full time for 1 year because the team there was one of the most amazing team I've ever worked with. Ever. In all the jobs I've ever worked.
And it's the data.
Yes, the
Wow.
specialist.
Okay.
So it was hard for me to leave that place because it's hard to find great people to work with. Like, you don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And there were 18 of us, and not everybody liked each other, but we were darn good at working together as a team. And sometimes I feel like things get placed in your life for a certain reason. Because I just learned so much from what it means to work with a team with that type of dynamic. Because we were a small group, right? There was probably 5 of us, and we all got great, but 18 people. And we were in a special department where it had to be secure. And so all 18 of us saw each other every day. Very fast paced. Deadlines needed to be met every hour. And the greatest things, I feel like some of the greatest leadership skills I have were gained from this position. Working with people who didn't focus on the problem, but showed up with solutions and showed up with asking, what do I got to do to help you get to the next step? Or to help you get through this deadline that we may or may not meet.
Yeah.
And that everyone jumped in. And when you're working with a team, there's people that have some friction.
Yeah.
People didn't care when that happened. We all had an end goal. We all knew what we had to do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And everyone jumped in and made it work, made the team successful every day. And that was really hard to walk away from.
It's like another community. And like, definitely, right?
Yeah.
And the family members sometimes we great.
So that I was there for 2 years total, but technically 1 year full time. And there was a management position open at that time I had applied for, and then the company got bought over.
Okay.
And so there were changes that were on its way, but haven't happened yet. Then on top of that, you're sitting for 40 hours a week straight. And it's so fast paced that you don't even know you're sitting, but you are sitting for 40 hours straight a week. And so between applying for the management position, new ownership, trying to understand where my health is at, which declined very quickly within that year full-time and the year previous part-time, I was afraid what that was going to do to me in 10 years, let alone 5 years.
Wow.
People were having several chiropractor visits. People were playing music chairs. Weight gain's an issue. Your eye vision, I ended up needing glasses, and I have 20/20 vision. That went away quickly after I left. So physically, I started to see my health slightly decline, and there were people that have dedicated 15 years there, and we talk about their health all the time, and I said, well, I used to say that couldn't be me in 5 years. And so this position came along, I applied for it, they offered me interviews, and it was like, okay. And so I did ask my boss at that time at the data specialist place, I left, like, what if it didn't work out? And she's like, go, don't stay. Like, it'll always be here for you. And that melted my heart, because to be a good worker and then have a manager encourage you to go where you feel you belong career-wise, or where you feel like you can thrive even more, even if you're afraid. There's not enough people who elevate others, encourage others to do what's great for them. So, I mean, my team was losing me, and she knew that, but she didn't want to see me stay there because she needed me. She's like, go.
She saw the bigger picture for you.
Like, go try it out. If it doesn't work out, come back.
After that, that was only a year, but a really impactful year.
Very, very impactful year. I mean, sometimes I just think I don't even know where I'd be at if I just went straight from my residential days to my commercial days.
Yeah. So you got to gain some different skills and different outlooks, and then bring that into here. So that starting here, so you're coming up on 9 years this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Going back to the business development half, was that the role that you came for?
So when I had applied here, I had sent in my resume and did not put on the resume what position I wanted. And there was a design position and a business development position open at the same time. And so the HR person at that time had just reached out to me. They read my description and felt that the business development position was a good fit for me. And so then I came in and interviewed, asked me which position I was interested in. And I said, I'm here to tell you my story wherever you see me fit. Like I can do either or, because in the residential world, you do everything from start to finish. You're the creator, you do the project, you do the design work, furniture layout, you work with the architects, you complete the project, do the installation, and do the follow-up, send a thank you card, everything. I mean, from beginning to order entry to install to follow-up. When you come to the commercial world, you now work with teams, and those hats are broken up into departments or team members. And so, and then coming from, I've always been in sales my whole life. I've worked since I was 14, and I've been in retail and, waitress positions my whole life. And so sales comes very naturally for me. And that's what's required for this position. Yes. And so it was just fitting that I had both, strong experience in both categories. And so when I came in, it just was fitting to go into the business development position.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, you have design elements, but I guess that's a business development within a design firm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like you get to experience the world. It sounds like to me you're combining the experience from that 1 year, like the data job, and bringing that in of knowing how to like keep going and how do we support the group versus some design. It's about my vision, what I see here.
Utilizing that team skill.
Yeah,
that has been tremendously helpful. Just because here, no one does it alone. Every successful project takes 3 to 4 people from start to finish. And so you really have to have a strong group mentality. You really have to, it's not about me. It's about the team. What one person doesn't do well, the whole team doesn't do well. What one person does well, the whole team needs to be proud of that, And so just really carrying that and understanding that and having that communication with each team member.
Yeah.
That they know, hey, you're just as important. Like everyone is important. We cannot have anyone less on this team. It takes all of us to make it operate.
That's really cool.
Which ties back to the Hmong community and their culture. Like we're such group-minded people. I grew up with 5 siblings, and we have very different personalities, but you learn to work with people, right?
Yeah.
Like you learn to have grace and to give grace. And you learn to scale so that you can compromise and move forward.
I feel like you write a resume again. A sibling of 5 siblings total, how to go through all the So, I mean, you've literally brought your upbringing, your values that have been instilled in you into your work world and found a position that can just flow between the two. It's not like having to switch modes. And so also, I want to hear about the Hmong community, that it's very vibrant in this area. And so can you share about that and being involved in that?
Okay, so my parents grew up in I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. My parents came here to the States in the late 70s after the Vietnam War. My father fought in the war from the age of 14 to 17. It took him 7 days to cross the jungles and monsoon of Laos to get to Thailand to ask for help to go back and get his. At that time, the war had ended in 75, and the American soldiers said, we're not going back. So then his siblings and the grandparents and the infants and the toddlers, they all had to trek the same journey as he did to get to Thailand. He met my mother there and married her, and then they came to the States in 78. They landed in Utah, I believe. But then my mom's siblings were here, right? Because they fought more closely to General Vang Pha, was direct connected with the American soldiers. And so when they got here to the States, they were able to connect with my mom's brothers and get over to Minnesota. And then all of my first cousins from both my maternal and paternal side moved to Minnesota, but my father came to Wausau to follow a clan leader who ended up having prostate cancer and passed away at the age. And so when he moved our family here, he started working at the center, which then was known as the Wausau Area Hmong Mutual Association. And ever since then, he's lived here. And, St. Paul's the second home to us. So we go there a lot, visit family a lot. I've only met my mom's mom, so my maternal grandmother. Never met my paternal parents. And I was really close to her. So I went to Minnesota a lot, stayed with her, grew up until my school days, then back home for school. And just involved with the Hmong American Center because of my dad's role. So him along with the organization spent many years focused on getting people into the workforce, helping people out of welfare and into homes, ownership, and out of rental, and just getting them into the educational system, getting them to classes to learn English. And at the time, they worked on a poor man's salary, but they didn't know any different, right? And I just remember being very involved with the organization, doing a lot of community events, lots of volunteer awards there, helping to educate just peers, being in organizations where there were peers like me, just learning how to navigate the Hmong American life. What does it mean now to be American, right? Like, how do you deal with the trauma that your parents carry without?
Yeah.
Lots of cultural differences and cultural clashes. So my older sister, my older brother dealt with more of those challenges than I did. I'm the middle child.
Yeah.
So it seems to get easier once you get down to the third child. You learn a little bit more, right? Yeah, but through all of that, that's where I did a lot of engagement with the Hmong community. And I just remember growing up thinking, like, I love being a part of the Hmong community. I love volunteering. I love engaging with the larger community, but I don't ever want to grow up poor. And it was hard. My mother worked 2 jobs to while my father served the community, he worked in lots of volunteer hours to work. And so, we sacrificed that. That was a sacrifice that we made for him to help the larger community get into the workforce and into the educational system and into homes. And, he's retired now. He unfortunately suffered a stroke last year, November, right before Thanksgiving. And we've had so many people reach out to us just because of the work that he's done for so long, that people just have been reaching out all over the United States and just checking in on him, sending financial, contributions to in any way, and just, asking to how he's doing and sending. And so you see the lifetime of my father's time here and how it's evolved, right? Because you think as a child, why is my father never home, right? Like, he's sacrificing so much. He's so busy, but I don't know that. And now as an adult, I look back and he had a bigger calling, Our community stands on the shoulders of people like, whether it went well or not, people may have their opinions, but they got people into the educational system. They got people into the workforce. They got people into homes and out of welfare. And you cannot deny that work. And it took a team of them at that organization to do that. And they did the best they could. They didn't speak English at all, I mean, how do you data collect to gain more financial funding and data collect well when you don't speak English? And it's, it's all new, it's foreign to you, right? And so there were many years of this great work that was done that was not collected. The data, I mean, it was, but not to the extent that it could have been.
Right.
And so now, as we come in as the next generation, we've seen that change with the Hmong American Center, and that we understand how important and how vital that data is.
Yeah.
And
their job. That's a beautiful trend.
And so when I went away to Milwaukee, you kind of take things for granted, and you just think like that's just the way that county is. And so you go to a different community and you're like, where's that? You kind of look for that, that feeling of home and comfort. And there's a beautiful Hmong community down there, but they're different from us. And I've witnessed Marathon County, their Hmong community is very strong, very engaged, very diverse, from all different backgrounds, careers, levels of positions. And we are just a very tight-knit community, and it's because of its location. I'm not, I don't know. It's just a beautiful community here, and it's different. The others aren't bad. It's just different.
That's your home.
And so along with that, when I had made the decision that I wasn't going to ever go into the nonprofit world because I live on a poor man's salary, I forged ahead and went into interior design. And I was a part of a women's leadership program in college. The question kept on coming up about how we would serve our communities. And I was so conflicted. I remember my junior and senior year of college, I was just like, what am I going to do with myself? Like interior design, I'm never going to be able to serve the community. Like, how does that go hand in hand? So I was very conflicted, and I just kind of made a decision, like, stop wavering and just forge ahead with interior design and kind of set that aside, right? Like set this community service portion of it aside. So I continued on to my journey, and as I got into the commercial world, and I started to discover opportunities that it provided me. It's like my prayers are answered, right?
Yeah.
How do I tie what I love so much into design with serving the community? And all of a sudden it just like started falling into place. You get involved, you connect with people, and you meet people who want to see this community be successful. And so that's what led me to meet with other Hmong professionals from completely different industries from me. And they're like, we love it here, but we don't have a tight-knit group where we can discuss what it means to be in the professional world, to climb that corporate ladder and embrace our identity. Yeah. Like, it's challenging. We don't want to get rid of it, but we want to know how to embrace it and navigate that and get better at it, right? And so I found a core group of 6 of us, 3 main people, me and 2 other people, came together to pull an organization called Central Wisconsin Hmong Professionals together. And that came really quickly together in 2018. It was actually discussed 2 years prior to that, but nothing ever came about from other folks in the community. And then 2 other gals, Song and Zhang, we got together and we're like, we can't be the only Hmong professionals in this community that has challenges and are dealing with it on an island, right? Like how do we balance culture and work, and then, educate family, what it means to focus on the professional world, because there's a lot of things to being a daughter-in-law, to being a daughter, to being a wife, to being a mother in the Hmong culture. I mean, it's a lot to carry. And so there's a lot of expectations culturally, traditionally, things that the role of this person should be, right? Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, to come into a work environment where you had to leave your family life at home, your personal life at home. Yeah, you don't ever talk about it. It was just like, when did the lines start to blend, right?
Yeah.
Like, when can I start being myself? And I was fortunate enough to be with an organization that allowed me to carry all of that and to truly embrace that without even, like, I didn't even realize it or know it until came to realization. Like, I came to realization, like, wow, I really can be myself here.
How long did it take before you realized you could do that?
I would say probably 5.5 years in, 6 years. Yeah. A lot of it is the role that I'm in itself is so complex. It's a 6-year learning curve alone just for the role. And so, you know, in order to learn all of that and be confident in your own skin, like, that's one aspect of it alone. Like, that's one layer. And then to be able to come to the table and truly bring your voice to the table in your own voice.
Right.
And to truly bring your ideas and thoughts and opinions to the table in your own voice. That's a whole nother layer level. So to be with a company that supports that and is open to that, naturally. Yeah.
And then you build in with like the economic development piece of it. With all the work that your dad did, you know, getting to take it to a different level and mapping, financial back, community back. What a pathway that he paved.
I'm still shocked to this day. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to continue that on in
Yeah.
a different way, but similar, same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny how
Yeah.
life just takes you to places that you wouldn't ever imagine. You know, it's like, you know, like, I always think back to Jim Terry, like, writing a check, wanting to be at a certain place in his life one day, right? And so it's like these things that we talk about and plant the seeds in our mind, but not know, like,
How
the
it's gonna get there.
steps of getting there.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, wow, like, I said this out loud way back when.
Yeah.
Here I am, right? Like, here.
I just took a little over. This is you had to walk through those things, able to get. That's the hard part. Many times I think people, that's one, but maybe it's going to be in a different way than you thought. Like, I mean, at New York, like, thinking about this and realizing the bigger picture, and you know, then you're working with the combo and getting to have the design world, the economic world, the economic development, community development. If you had tunnel vision, you wouldn't have been able to see those opportunities.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. Unfortunately, adversity is a great thing.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like walking through coal, right? Just like, I don't know why I have to experience all these horrible things, but it definitely has given me the perspective that I have today.
Mhm.
It's given me the ability to scale and to make decisions that are the right fit based on what I've been exposed to, right? And experience, you know, being able to experience things and remove yourself from certain situations to make a clear decision because you've had experiences or been exposed to people or spaces or places that made you aware of those things.
Wow, what a treat. Seriously. Over this program, because you were part of the MBA program, which, you know, that's how I got connected with you, and I doubt we would have crossed if it weren't for something like that. And so just understanding like the bigger picture of community and bringing people together and pooling together skills and resources to help each other. And thank you for taking your time and sharing your story. So inspiring.
Oh,
So
thank you for your time.
Thank you again for joining me in that conversation with LADA. one of the elements that really resonated with me was when she was being conflicted of how her passion for interior design and how is it actually going to serve her community larger, like in a larger capacity. She said specifically, how am I going to serve my community? I was so conflicted. Interior design, I'm never going to be able to serve the community. How does that go hand in hand? And I felt that. As a photographer, there are times where I have just been like, what am I doing? How is taking pictures making an impact? And how is creating portraits for people actually going to make a difference? And I kept moving forward like LADA did. And it's there. It's having that conflict. And it's okay. Knowing that and hearing somebody else say that, I was like, oh, good. You too. Which is a whole element of this, the weight of being seen. When we bring those kinds of like questions that we ask ourselves into the world, and like her doing that, I was able to share in that and feel like, okay, it's okay to have that question and still move forward. Because when I heard her speaking, I'm like, I see this larger impact that she's making. And so through that, I don't know if you've had that kind of a conversation with someone, but they're able to reflect back to you of what you're actually doing versus hearing that inner doubt and turmoil and confliction of your passion versus, whatever you think. I just hope that you have the courage to step out there and share those inner questions with somebody close to you so that they can reflect back to you. And you are making a difference. You are. So thank you for joining me. I look forward to our next conversation.